She wasn't supposed to survive. The doctor's words echoed in Sarah's mind like a distant thunderstorm, ominous and deafening. She sat alone in the sterile white room, her hands trembling, the weight of those words crushing her chest. Weeks. That's all they said she had left. Weeks to live. The cancer had spread too far, too fast. Yet, amidst the sorrow and despair, one presence refused to accept it, her German shepherd, Max. As the world around her seemed to close in, Max lay quietly at her feet, his amber eyes fixed on her with an unwavering gaze. There was no fear in his eyes, only a steadfast resolve. His loyalty was a constant, unspoken promise. No matter the odds, he would not let her face this alone. The days that followed were a blur of treatments, appointments, and restless nights. But through it all, Max remained by her side, his presence a silent reminder that love does not give up easily. He would nudge her hand gently when she cried, lay his head on her lap when the pain became unbearable, and at night, he would curl up beside her, his body a warm, reassuring weight against hers. On the worst days, when the thought of surrendering seemed easier than the fight, Max's silent vigil was all she needed to push forward, to keep going. But even as the days grew darker and her body grew weaker, Max continued to defy the inevitable. Every morning, he would nudge her with his nose, urging her to get out of bed, as if to say, "We're not done yet. Not today." She couldn't explain it, but she felt his will to live intertwined with her own. It was as if Max knew something she didn't. As the weeks passed, something miraculous began to happen. Sarah's condition stabilized, defying all expectations. The doctors were baffled. Max's unyielding love and loyalty had done something science couldn't explain. With each passing day, Sarah grew stronger, and the prognosis that once seemed like a death sentence now seemed like a distant memory. The healing process wasn't easy, but with Max by her side, every step felt a little less daunting. It wasn't just the medical treatments or the passing of time that had given Sarah a second chance. It was the bond she shared with Max, a bond forged in love, loyalty, and the unwavering belief that together, they could face anything. The miracle wasn't just in her recovery, but in the quiet determination of a dog who wouldn't give up, even when the world told them both to. Sarah's journey wasn't over, and neither was Max's. They had been given a new chance, and this time, nothing would stand in their way. The days seemed to stretch on forever, but with each sunrise, Sarah felt something shift within her. It was subtle at first, just a small change. Her energy levels were a little higher, the pain a little less intense. She couldn't explain it, but she knew one thing for sure. Max's presence was more than just a comfort. It was a lifeline. The mornings were always the hardest. The weight of the night's thoughts lingered as she awoke, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the doctor's words still held truth. But then, there was Max, his warm body curled beside her, always there, never asking for anything, simply waiting for her to take that first step. Every morning, she would run her fingers through his thick, sable fur and feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her palm. It was like a promise that no matter how dark things seemed, she wasn't alone. She wasn't going anywhere without him. One particular morning, Sarah noticed something different. She felt stronger, more alive than she had in weeks. She had always dreaded the idea of leaving the safety of her bed, but today, Max gave her a look that made her want to try. She pushed herself up slowly, her legs weak but determined, and as she stood, Max followed closely behind, his eyes never leaving her. She had to lean on the wall to steady herself, but Max didn't waver, his presence like an anchor. He nudged her gently, as if to say, "You've got this." With each step, she felt more confident. They walked together, slowly at first, through the house. Max stayed right beside her, guiding her, reassuring her with his unwavering loyalty. It was in those quiet moments that Sarah realized just how much she had come to rely on him. It wasn't just about physical recovery, it was about emotional healing, too. Her bond with Max was becoming something deeper, something beyond words. Later that day, when the doctor came to check on her, he looked at her in disbelief. Her progress was remarkable. They had expected to see her deteriorating by now, but instead, Sarah was sitting up, talking, and even smiling. She could feel the weight of the doctor's confusion and curiosity. It wasn't just the treatment that was working. Something else was at play, something no one could explain. "You're doing great, Sarah," the doctor said, trying to hide his surprise. "This is unexpected." She smiled softly, her gaze drifting to Max, who was sitting quietly at her feet, as if he already knew the truth. Max had never given up on her, and in return, she had found a strength she didn't know she had. Each day, she felt herself coming back to life, little by little. The recovery was slow, but with Max by her side, it felt less daunting. He was her anchor, her reminder that no matter what, there was always hope. Every step she took was a victory, and with Max by her side, she would continue walking forward, one day at a time. The days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, Sarah's strength continued to grow. It was as if Max's presence had become the heartbeat of her recovery. Every morning, they would start their day the same way. Sarah would wake up to Max's warm body beside hers, his eyes full of hope, always waiting for her to take the next step. Her legs, once weak and unsteady, now carried her with more confidence. She wasn't walking with a limp anymore. She was walking with purpose. Max was always by her side, guiding her through the motions of life. As Sarah began to regain her independence, she found herself embracing life again. The quiet walks through the house, once an impossible task, were now a routine. She would stand in front of the window, looking outside at the world she had once thought she was leaving behind. Max would nudge her gently, as if urging her to step outside and live again. And she did. The first time she stepped out onto the porch, the fresh air hit her like a wave. The scent of the flowers in the garden, the sound of birds in the trees, everything felt so alive. It was a feeling she had long forgotten, but now it was back. She could feel the warmth of the sun on her face, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to smile. Max stood beside her, his head held high, his tail wagging slightly. He was proud of her, and in that moment, Sarah realized something incredible. It wasn't just Max who had saved her. It was the love they shared, the bond that had never wavered, even in the darkest moments. She had fought for her life, and Max had been there every step of the way. It wasn't easy, but with each day, Sarah felt like she was becoming more herself again. She started eating better, gaining back the weight she had lost, and the fatigue that had once ruled her life began to lift. Her body was healing, but so was her spirit. The emotional toll of her illness had been just as heavy as the physical one, but now, with Max by her side, she felt whole again. One afternoon, as Sarah sat in the garden, watching Max chase after a butterfly, she thought back to those first dark days when she had thought it was all over. She had accepted the fate the doctors had predicted, but Max had never given up on her. And now, here she was, breathing in the air, feeling the warmth of the sun, surrounded by the love of her loyal companion. It was a miracle, one that couldn't be explained by science or medicine, but one that she would forever be grateful for. Max had been her rock, her protector, her reason to keep fighting. And in return, she had become his. Together, they had defied the odds. Together, they had proved that love, loyalty, and hope could heal even the most broken of souls. Sarah knew now that no matter what happened, she would never be alone. Max was her miracle, her heart, her second chance at life. Weeks passed, and the world outside Sarah's little home seemed to become brighter with each passing day. Her strength continued to grow, and Max was always there, leading her through every moment. Every morning, they would step outside together, Sarah's legs a little stronger, her spirit a little lighter. Max had a way of making her believe that life was worth fighting for, no matter how dark it seemed. One day, as she walked along the garden path, feeling the sun on her face, Sarah noticed something different. There was a spring in her step, a joy in her heart that she hadn't felt in months. Max trotted ahead of her, looking back every few moments as if to make sure she was still following. It was as if he knew she was getting stronger and wanted to show her the world, one step at a time. The once desolate garden, overgrown with weeds, now bloomed with colors, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air. Sarah couldn't help but smile. She had taken small steps before, but today, she felt as though she was standing on the edge of something much bigger. As they reached the edge of the yard, Sarah stopped, her eyes catching sight of a family of birds perched on a nearby tree. She stood still, breathing in the peaceful moment, letting the calmness wash over her. She realized she hadn't felt peace like this in a long time. Not just the peace of the garden, but the peace within herself. Max sat beside her, his fur ruffling gently in the breeze. She reached down and scratched behind his ears, feeling the familiar warmth of his presence. "We made it," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Max looked up at her, his amber eyes gleaming with understanding, as if he had known all along that they would. The journey had been hard, and there were still days when the pain would come creeping back, but those days were fewer now. Sarah had learned to hold onto the moments of light, to let the love and loyalty of her dog carry her through the darkness. That evening, as Sarah sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of orange and pink, she realized something profound. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about living. Max had not only helped her fight through the physical pain, he had shown her how to embrace life again. Every moment with him was a reminder of the simple joys, the beauty in the small things. She thought about the dark days in the hospital when she had felt so hopeless, when she had almost given in to despair. She had been so sure that there was no way out, but Max had believed in her when no one else did. He had fought for her with every ounce of his being. And now, here she was, sitting in the warmth of the setting sun, feeling alive. It was a feeling she had never expected to experience again. Max's presence in her life had been a miracle, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was always hope. As the night grew darker and the stars began to twinkle above, Sarah knew one thing for certain. No matter what the future held, she would face it with Max by her side, her loyal companion, her friend, and her miracle. As the days continued to pass, Sarah felt a newfound sense of purpose with each step she took. She was no longer simply going through the motions of survival. She was living. Max, her loyal German shepherd, had become more than just a pet. He was her constant companion, her anchor in the storm. Every morning, they would walk together, exploring the garden she had once thought was beyond saving. The once overgrown path was now trimmed neatly, the flowers blooming in every corner. It felt like a fresh start, not just for the garden, but for her life as well. Max would trot ahead, ears perked, as if showing her the way. Every step they took together was a step toward healing. Sarah marveled at the strength she had found, not just physically, but emotionally. The dark days of uncertainty and fear seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by the warmth of the present moment. One afternoon, as she sat on the porch, watching the wind gently sway the trees, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. She thought back to the days when she had been confined to her bed, weak and frail, unable to imagine a life beyond the hospital room. It seemed like a lifetime ago, but here she was, sitting in the sun, with Max by her side. She felt stronger than she ever had, both inside and out. The pain was still there, lingering in the background, but it no longer defined her. Max had given her the strength to face each day with hope and courage. They had both been through so much, and yet, here they were, together. Sarah leaned down and stroked Max's fur, feeling the familiar warmth that had been her source of comfort through the darkest times. She smiled, knowing that no matter what happened next, she would never be alone. Max had shown her that the power of love and loyalty could heal even the deepest wounds. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving, about making the most of the time she had, and embracing the life she had fought so hard to keep. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the yard, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't just grateful for her recovery. She was grateful for the journey, for the lessons it had taught her. She had learned to appreciate the small moments, the ones that often went unnoticed, the feel of the grass beneath her feet, the sound of Max's paws on the ground, the quiet beauty of the world around her. With Max by her side, she knew that no challenge was too great. Together, they had overcome the impossible. And with each passing day, Sarah knew that she had been given a second chance at life, one that she would never take for granted. The days were becoming a blur of new routines for Sarah, but this time, it felt different. The air around her seemed lighter, the sky brighter, and with every step she took, her body and spirit grew stronger. Max, ever the faithful companion, was by her side, always a step ahead or just beside her, his presence a comforting constant. As she walked along the garden path one afternoon, Sarah realized that the world around her had transformed. The trees seemed fuller, The flowers bloomed with vibrant colors, and the once neglected yard now looked like something out of a dream. She could feel the warmth of the sun on her face and hear the gentle hum of nature surrounding her. Life, in all its simplicity, felt so rich now. Max, with his ever-watchful eyes, trotted ahead, his tail wagging happily, as if encouraging her to follow him into this newfound world. He had always been the one to push her forward, even when she had no energy to take another step. He never allowed her to give up on herself, and because of that, she had learned to keep going, even on the hardest days. That evening, as the sun set, Sarah sat on the porch, watching the colors of the sky shift from warm oranges to soft pinks. She felt at peace, a calmness that had eluded her for so long. She had faced the darkest moments of her life, moments when she believed she would never see the light again. Yet, here she was, sitting outside, feeling the cool evening breeze, knowing that she had fought for every single breath she had left. And through it all, Max had been there, never once leaving her side. The bond they shared was more than just that of a dog and his owner. It was a partnership, a deep connection that had saved them both. Sarah had learned so much from Max, lessons of love, loyalty, and perseverance. He had taught her to live again. With each passing day, she found herself more engaged with life. The simple act of sitting outside, enjoying the sunset, became a moment of profound gratitude. She was no longer just surviving. She was living. And Max was right there, enjoying the small moments with her. The journey had been long and filled with uncertainty, but now, with Max by her side, Sarah knew that the future held more than just struggle. It held hope. She had learned to take things one day at a time, cherishing each moment, no matter how small. Max had shown her that life was about the little victories, the quiet moments, the shared experiences, and the unwavering support of a loyal friend. And so, as they sat together in the fading light, Sarah knew that, no matter what happened next, they had already won. They had made it through the darkest times, and together, they would continue to walk forward into whatever came next. It was early morning when Sarah realized something that had quietly shifted within her over the past few months. She was no longer defined by her illness, by the pain, or by the fear of what might come next. The road to recovery had been long, but as she stood at the edge of her garden, feeling the soft breeze against her face, she understood that this moment, right here, was where she had reclaimed her life. Max stood beside her, his head held high, eyes sparkling with the same determination that had kept them going through the hardest days. She had come so far, and Max had been with her every step of the way, never wavering, never giving up on her. Sarah smiled softly as she reached down to stroke his fur. It was the same fur she had clung to when the darkness seemed overwhelming. But now, it was a symbol of their shared strength and the bond that had carried her through it all. In the distance, the sun began to rise, casting its warm golden light across the horizon. Sarah watched as the first rays of sunlight touched the earth, bathing everything in its glow. The world felt new again, and for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt the weight of the past few months lift off her shoulders. She had survived, and now she was living. She had learned to take each day with gratitude, to find beauty in the small moments, to embrace the love and loyalty that Max gave her so freely. As she walked alongside him, she thought back to when she had been so afraid, when the future had seemed so uncertain. Back then, she had thought she was out of time, but now, she knew that time was a gift. Every moment, no matter how small, was worth living. Max trotted ahead of her, turning his head to make sure she was still following. And in that simple act, Sarah found herself once again reminded of what it meant to be truly alive. It wasn't about the destination, it was about the journey. And the journey had taken them from darkness to light, from despair to hope. As Sarah walked through the garden, feeling the earth beneath her feet, she knew that no matter what happened next, she had already won. She had learned to live again, and with Max by her side, she was ready for whatever came their way. The world, once so heavy and uncertain, was now a place filled with possibility. She had found her strength, her hope, and her joy, all through the unwavering love of a dog who refused to let her go. The weeks rolled on, and Sarah found herself adjusting to a new rhythm. Life, once filled with uncertainty, now seemed like a series of moments to cherish, moments that she hadn't truly appreciated before. Every morning, she woke up to the soft sound of Max's paws on the floor as he walked over to her side of the bed. It was a simple routine, but one that filled her heart with warmth. Max, her constant companion, her silent hero, was the reason she had found the strength to get up every day. The days had become easier to face, but still, there were moments when the fear of relapse crept into Sarah's mind. It was a quiet fear, the kind that didn't shout but lingered in the corners of her thoughts. But whenever that fear rose, Max was there to ground her, to remind her that she wasn't alone. They spent their days together, Max's presence always nearby, and Sarah began to feel a sense of peace that had once felt impossible. Her walks in the garden had become longer, and the once overgrown paths were now neatly trimmed. The flowers bloomed brighter, and the birds sang louder, as if celebrating the miracle that was her recovery. Each step she took, every smile she shared, was a small victory. Max, of course, was by her side, trotting along happily as though he knew exactly how much they had overcome together. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch, Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed. It wasn't just the recovery that amazed her, it was the way she now saw the world. The simple beauty of nature, the joy in Max's eyes, the way her heart swelled with love. These things were no longer taken for granted. Sarah had learned to appreciate the small moments, the quiet victories, the love that filled her life. She had also come to understand that healing wasn't just about the body, it was about the spirit. Max had healed her in ways that no doctor or treatment ever could. He had shown her the true meaning of loyalty, of love without condition. And in doing so, he had brought her back to life. As she watched the sun set that evening, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had faced the hardest battle of her life and had come out the other side. And through it all, Max had never wavered. His love had been her constant, and together, they had created something beautiful from the ashes of what had once seemed like an impossible situation. Max's tail wagged gently beside her, his presence a reminder that life, in all its unpredictability, was worth living. She had been given a second chance, a chance to live fully, to love deeply, and to cherish the bond she shared with her dog. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah knew that with Max by her side, there was nothing she couldn't face. The seasons continued to change, each one marking a new chapter in Sarah's journey. The crisp autumn air replaced the warmth of summer, but Sarah, with Max at her side, welcomed the shift. She had come to cherish the change, just as she had learned to embrace change in her own life. Max's loyalty had been her anchor through the toughest of times, and now, every step she took with him felt like a victory, a triumph over everything that had once seemed insurmountable. One morning, Sarah stood in the kitchen, looking out the window as the golden light of dawn filtered through the trees. She had grown used to the calm mornings, the routine of waking up and starting her day with Max by her side. It was a peace she had never known before, a kind of peace that filled the spaces left by fear and uncertainty. Max was lying at her feet, his head resting on his paws, watching her with those deep amber eyes. She smiled at him, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. He wagged his tail in response, his silent way of telling her that everything was as it should be. Sarah had never imagined that she would come to this point, where life felt so full of possibility. There were still moments of doubt, of course. She would occasionally feel the lingering weight of the past, the fear that her recovery could be a fleeting dream. But in those moments, Max would always be there, his presence a constant reminder that she was strong, that she had overcome so much. They had both fought hard to get here, and together, they had built something unbreakable. As Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down at the table, she looked at Max and realized just how much he had taught her. He had taught her the power of patience, of love, and of resilience. He had shown her that even in the face of the greatest challenges, there was always a way forward. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving, about finding joy in the everyday moments, in the quiet companionship they shared. The months that followed were filled with small victories, days when Sarah felt stronger, when the world seemed more open to her. She started taking longer walks with Max, venturing beyond the garden, exploring the quiet streets of her neighborhood. Each step was a reminder that she was still here, still fighting, still living. One day, as they walked through the park, Sarah couldn't help but notice how much had changed. The trees, once bare and lifeless, were now full of color, their leaves turning shades of red and orange. The world around her had transformed, just as she had. And with Max by her side, she knew that no matter what the future held, she would face it with the same strength and determination that had carried her through the darkest days. She was ready for whatever came next. She was ready to live fully, to embrace every moment, because she knew that, with Max, there was nothing she couldn't face. As Sarah continued to heal, she found herself stepping into a new life, one she never could have imagined during the darkest days of her illness. The weight of the past slowly lifted, replaced with a sense of peace she had longed for. Each day, Max seemed to reflect the same sense of renewal. He had been with her through it all, always there, his loyalty unwavering. Together, they had come so far. Their bond had deepened, growing beyond the love of a pet and owner into something far more profound. It was a connection built on trust, patience, and shared strength. Max had become more than just her companion. He was her partner, her reminder of everything worth fighting for. Their days had become simple, but in their simplicity, Sarah found so much beauty. The mornings were no longer filled with dread. Instead, they were moments of quiet joy, the soft patter of Max's paws on the floor signaling the start of a new day. As Sarah got out of bed each morning, she no longer felt the heaviness she had once carried. She was stronger now, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. She was no longer a prisoner to her fear, to the uncertainty of what might come. Max had given her the gift of hope, and now she was ready to live fully. On weekends, Sarah and Max would go on longer walks, venturing further into the world beyond their home. It was a world she had almost given up on, but now it was waiting for her, full of possibilities. She would watch Max explore the parks, his ears alert, his tail wagging, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude wash over her. She had been given a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it. One Sunday afternoon, Sarah sat by the window, watching Max run around the yard. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow on everything it touched. Sarah felt the warmth of the sunlight on her skin, the breeze gently ruffling her hair. It was a moment of serenity, a moment she had almost lost. Max came bounding back to her, stopping just in front of her with a wag of his tail. He looked up at her, as if asking her to join him. With a smile, Sarah stood and stepped outside. It wasn't just a walk. It was a new beginning. The joy of each step was no longer overshadowed by the fear of the unknown. The world was bright, and Sarah was ready to embrace it all, knowing that no matter what came her way, she would face it with Max by her side, her loyal friend, her miracle. As the days grew warmer, Sarah found herself growing in ways she had never anticipated. The early mornings, once filled with uncertainty, now held the promise of something beautiful. She had learned to savor these quiet moments, to appreciate the peace that Max had brought into her life. Together, they had conquered so much, and now, their world was full of possibilities. One afternoon, as Sarah sat by the window, watching Max chase after a butterfly, she reflected on everything she had been through. There were moments when she had thought she would never make it, when the future seemed too uncertain to hold on to. But now, the uncertainty was gone, replaced by a calm confidence she had never known. Max had been her constant, her unwavering source of strength, and with him by her side, she had learned to live again. The days had become routine, but in that routine, Sarah had found something extraordinary. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was present, truly living. Max's playful antics brought a sense of joy that filled her heart. She would watch him run through the yard, his tail wagging in delight, and she would smile, knowing that every moment with him was a gift. They had both fought so hard to get here, and now they were free to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. On the weekends, they would take long walks through the neighborhood, enjoying the fresh air and the sound of birds chirping in the trees. Max would lead the way, always looking back to make sure Sarah was following. It was a small gesture, but it was one that spoke volumes about their bond. Sarah had never felt so connected to the world around her, and it was all because of Max. He had taught her to appreciate the little things, to find beauty in the everyday moments that often went unnoticed. One evening, As the sun set behind the trees, Sarah sat on the porch, a contented smile on her face. Max lay beside her, his head resting on his paws, watching the world go by. Sarah couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. She had been given a second chance, a chance to live fully, to love without fear, and to appreciate the life she had. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about embracing every moment with an open heart. And as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Sarah knew that no matter what the future held, she would face it with Max by her side, her loyal companion, her miracle. The days seemed to blend together in a peaceful routine. Sarah had learned to embrace the simple, quiet moments. Her life, once filled with fear and uncertainty, had now transformed into something beautiful, something full of love and purpose. With Max by her side, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for every step they had taken together. Their bond had only grown stronger. Max's presence in her life had become a constant reminder of the strength she possessed, even when she had doubted herself. There were still challenges ahead, of course, but Sarah had learned not to fear them. Instead, she faced each new day with courage, knowing that whatever came her way, she would be okay. The mornings were filled with sunshine, and Sarah would often sit by the window, watching Max explore the yard. His joyful energy never failed to make her smile. He was more than just a dog. He was her companion, her protector, and the embodiment of unconditional love. Max's loyalty was a gift that she cherished more than anything. They spent hours together outside, walking through the neighborhood, enjoying the fresh air and the simple pleasures of life. Sarah had learned to find beauty in these small moments. As the months passed, Sarah's health continued to improve. The shadows of doubt and fear that had once consumed her were now distant memories. She had faced the impossible and had come out stronger on the other side. And through it all, Max had never left her side. He had been her constant companion, the one who had believed in her even when she had no strength left to believe in herself. One afternoon, as they sat in the garden, Sarah looked at Max and realized how much they had both grown. They had both survived the darkest days, and now, here they were, together in the light. She knew that the road ahead would never be without challenges, but she also knew that she was not alone. Max had taught her that love and loyalty could heal even the deepest wounds. And as they sat there together, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had learned to live again, to appreciate the world around her, and most importantly, to cherish the bond she shared with Max. With him by her side, she knew that there was nothing they couldn't face. The journey had been long, but it had brought her to this moment, a moment filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. And no matter what the future held, Sarah knew that Max would be there, walking beside her every step of the way. As the seasons continued to shift, Sarah found herself embracing each day with a new sense of appreciation. The months had passed in a blur, but now she understood what it meant to truly live in the present. The past, with all its pain and uncertainty, had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. Max, always by her side, had given her the strength to move forward, to face the future with hope rather than fear. She had learned to cherish the quiet moments, the simple joys that life had to offer. Each morning, as the sun's first light filtered through the trees, Sarah would wake to find Max already awake, watching over her with those deep amber eyes. There was a peace in his gaze, a comfort in his presence that had become an anchor for her. He had been with her through the darkest moments, and now, with him beside her, everything seemed brighter. The days were no longer clouded by doubt. Sarah had rediscovered the beauty in the world, and every step she took felt like a step toward a new beginning. She spent her days with Max, walking through the neighborhood, breathing in the fresh air, and feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. She could hear the laughter of children playing in the distance, the chirping of birds in the trees, and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was a world that was full of life, and for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a part of it. Max, ever the playful spirit, would run ahead, his tail wagging, his joy contagious. Sarah couldn't help but smile at his antics, his carefree nature reminding her that life was meant to be lived with love, with laughter, and with an open heart. There were still moments of uncertainty, moments when the past would resurface, but Sarah had learned to face those moments with courage. She no longer feared the future. Instead, she looked forward to it with the knowledge that no matter what came her way, she would always have Max by her side. He had been her constant, her source of strength, and the reason she had kept fighting. As she sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun set and the stars begin to twinkle in the sky, Sarah realized just how far she had come. The road had been long, and the journey had not been easy, but she had made it. She had found herself again, found a new sense of purpose and joy in the life she was now living. With Max by her side, she knew that the future held more than just challenges. It held endless possibilities. She was no longer defined by what she had been through. She was defined by what she had overcome. And with Max, her loyal companion, she was ready for whatever came next.